Guidance is internal. Ignition sequence starts. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Permission to board. Permission to come aboard. Permission to board. Permission to bring me aboard. Permission to come aboard.
Welcome to the Permission Granted podcast. Here's D.A.
All right, welcome inside the most recent edition of the Permission Granted podcast, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. You can always catch us on iTunes as well as SoundCloud and on YouTube, youtube.com/TheDA Show. Subscribe to all those places. It's completely free, and this is a lot of stuff that you will not hear on the air. Good friend of mine, who is a sports talk radio host in Houston on Sports Radio 610. You also hear him on the CBS Sports Network on weekends, is Nick Wright, and he joins us here on the show right now. Mr. Wright, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's an honor. Thank you, D.A.
And it really is an honor, isn't it?
I'm one of the 14 biggest honors of my life.
Well, as long as we crack the top 15. Before we get into the real stuff, I did want to ask, I got a Twitter mention or a tweet from somebody who said that you had mentioned me on the air as a co-conspirator in one of the most embarrassing moments of your life. I didn't really get from the detail, though, what it was. What was that?
Do you remember a young lady that was a waitress at a Kansas City nightclub called Blonde?
Yes.
Okay, do you already know the story now?
No, I don't think I do know this story. Well, I know that even after for those that need the background, Nick went to Syracuse, as did I, but we were years apart. But I did know Nick through mutual friends, especially when he came to Kansas City. I was still there. Nick's first job was doing nights there when I was doing mornings, and then about a year later I left, but we always remain in contact and friends. And so in Kansas City, we ended up knowing a lot of the same people.
Well, you were actually at this event, Damon. It was actually your event. When you left Kansas City, when you were leaving, you threw a party at the nightclub Blonde. I had a very big crush on the waitress who we all knew. And I thought, maybe 7 Grey Goose and ices in, that I had a decent shot. So I'm flirting with her and I'm talking to her. And, she's our waitress, but she's also kind of hanging out with us. And at one point in the evening, and this is your goodbye party. You have gotten a job in Miami. You are leaving. And this is your goodbye party. And you've ordered a few bottles. And at one point in the evening, I realize I'm going to throw up. And I look across the dance floor, and I'm like, there is no chance I can make it from here to the bathroom, navigating through all these people. Like, I've got 15 seconds maximum.
Yeah.
And I grab the bucket that the bottle comes in, like the ice bucket.
Yeah.
And I throw up in the bucket.
Oh.
And then I set it on the ground and act like nothing happened.
Oh, God. This happened at my going away party under my table.
But a young lady saw it and said nothing to me. And then I leave, eventually. And the waitress at some point discovers this bucket of vomit that I have left for her to clean up, I guess. I was hoping someone else would.
Let me ask you this. Did you notice a significant downturn in your relationship with the beautiful blonde that you were infatuated with?
I don't think I ever spoke to her again.
Because you were mortified or because she thought you were disgusting?
I think, I mean, certainly the former and potentially the latter.
Well, all's well that ends well because the fashion bird is beautiful. Your wife is gorgeous. You guys have a wonderful family together, and everyone ended up happy, even despite you puking in a bucket at my going away party.
It's all true. It is all true. And you know what? You know who I blame, actually? I blame the management of our radio station in Kansas City for not doing the smart thing and just meeting what I heard were your exorbitant salary demands.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that's for another podcast, how Sports Radio 610 in Kansas City handled my negotiations and the pursuant aftermath of that. But, that's a whole other podcast. I wanted to have you on for 2 reasons. I wanted to talk to you about Jadeveon Clowney since you're based in Houston and this microfracture surgery, but also once the Goodell stuff broke today, I really wanted to talk to you about this. And so we have now the testimony from the Ray Rice investigation and the appeals process. And I know that you're not a huge Goodell fan. I'm not a huge Goodell fan. Hopefully we won't get cut off of this like Bill Simmons did. But was there anything surprising here? Because to me, I always kind of felt like Goodell was kind of a bumbling fool in this. But I thought it was more measured and calculated how he was being evasive. In this testimony and evidence, it kind of feels like he's really bad at his job, just kind of as like a real bumbling fool.
Okay, so the only thing that was surprising to me was that he seemed legitimately unprepared for this interview. Mm-hmm. But the rest of it, like, why does anyone believe that Roger Goodell is above average intelligence? Like, why?
Well, I guess this is a good question. See, this is where perception is reality. He appears to be a decently spoken guy. He is always dressed very well, and he has an aura of authority. And so I think we assume he's smarter than he is. But this is the evidence that he might be really bad at just doing this, what appears to be not a very difficult job.
If your father was a senator and you make $40 million a year and you can't speak well and dress well, you likely have a mental disability. So let's be like, that strikes me as when people used to say, Colin Powell, he speaks so well, the old Chris Rock skit. Well, he's the freaking Secretary of Defense. What did you expect him to sound like? Like, of course, Roger Goodell is going to speak well.
Okay, but let me stop you there, Nick, because if you put Bud Selig, Gary Bettman, and Goodell next to one another, who would we all assume was better at their job? It would be the persona of Roger Goodell.
Well, he's better looking than those people. And you're right, he does dress better.
And he's got a better public perception. It seems like he handles himself in interviews or questionnaires or whatever in a better way than those two guys. Those two guys do seem more mealy-mouthed and kind of frail or unsure of themselves.
Now, that's a totally fair point, and it's a good point. But let's get back to, like, who Roger Goodell is. This is a man that has a bachelor's degree and nothing more. And again, I have a bachelor's degree and nothing more. I'm not knocking that, but I'm saying it's not his educational background is minimal at best. This is a man who has had one job and one job only, working for the NFL. This is a man who has had no real life hardships, thanks to the fact, I shouldn't say that. He has had minimal experience as an everyman, thanks to the fact that his father was a U.S. Senator and he rose relatively quickly within the NFL ranks. And there are a lot of people that will argue Roger Goodell, his job is to take the bullets for the NFL. They pay him $40 million a year, so we are talking about him instead of talking about the owners. And I get that to an extent, but you could get a lot of people to take those bullets for that salary and be competent. I mean, Damon, I have never, ever heard someone in that CEO level position so often and readily admit, I'm learning on the job. How many times we heard Roger Goodell say, I didn't get it right, I'll do better, I'm learning as I go. We heard it with Bountygate. We never heard it with Spygate, but I've still never heard a justifiable explanation for why he burnt those tapes, essentially. In 2009, he goes 2009, not 1974, 2009. He goes before Congress and says he sees no correlation between concussions and long-term brain damage, and he screwed up. I mean, the replacement ref, like, I can't think of a single major NFL controversy or decision that has happened under his watch that he hasn't butchered. And he has been inculcated by a subservient and embarrassing media, the front man for which, and I hope I don't get anyone in trouble here, but is obviously Peter King. And people that are just so awed by the power that they don't understand, that they seem to not see the absurdity in their own statement. In this morning, and I don't know when people are going to be listening to this, the Wednesday morning's Wall Street Journal, there is a passage that says, the night of the Ray Rice controversy, Goodell was bunkered down in his office. They ordered pizzas. No one dared eat before Goodell. Goodell never ate. The pizzas remained cold. Like, what are we talking? Is this Margaret Thatcher? Like, who are we talking about here? These people don't eat before Goodell eats? And someone might ask or wonder, why, how can he be so tone deaf? How can he continue to make these mistakes? And my question to you on that would be this, DA. How many regular people does Roger Goodell interact with on a daily basis?
Are we including his family?
No. Outside of, his wife and children.
Okay. Probably very few. I mean, maybe his car, maybe his driver, maybe the guy that...
You think he talks to his driver? I don't.
Well,
I think it's his doorman.
Okay, so his doorman, or what I'm saying is doorman driver, the guy that works the gate at his complex, or wherever he has houses, those types of...
And I think that's the list. I think, other than that, he is in a bubble of yes men and billionaires, and you add to that the bubbles he grew up in, and I just think he has no perception. I mean, he said in that testimony he was unaware that people were calling for his job after the 2-game suspension. He said in that testimony, how many times did he say, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know the answer to that? Like, he just seems so dreadfully unaware of public perception and how to competently do his job.
See, to me, this is what changed today, okay, on Wednesday, as I read through his testimony in this. I went from believing all of those other things that you talked about where he seemingly butchered it or botched it. He was just carrying out marching orders of the NFL owners. He was, for lack of a better phrase, the NFL shield. And so when he would say things that seemed incompetent, they were simply non-answers to protect the league and to protect the owners. They told him X, he said X, even if it made him look bad. What this testimony made me feel is he's legitimately incompetent, that he really doesn't know what he's doing, that this is not about carrying out marching orders. It's about he has a significant lapse in the way you need to at least have knowledge of your position and don't have knowledge of the position, because there was a lot of things that I read that didn't seem like you were just stonewalling law enforcement because you wanted to protect Ray Rice. It seemed like actual incompetence and negligence in this.
Well, yes. Like, how could it be anything but that? And we have been conditioned as Americans to just be so in awe of the people in power. Like, how many times have people, you heard talking heads say, well, the owners didn't become owners by being stupid. Well, that's interesting, because 1/3 of the league's owners directly inherited their teams from their dads. Another 4 inherited the money to buy their teams from their dads, and one of them married a Walmart heir to get his team. So half the league's owners, I have no reason to believe are competent whatsoever. Like, we just naturally ascribe these very noble and generous characteristics to the super rich. Not the athletes, because they got there because they can run and jump, but the super rich, typically older, almost always white business guy. We just assume they know better than us. We just assume they are more competent than us. And this the testimony, in my eyes, is evidence exhibit number Z, letter Z, that Roger Goodell is not more competent than any of us. And when people bring up the revenue, how much money the owners have made, this is an analogy I've used before, and I think it holds. Giving Roger Goodell credit for the growth of the NFL is not very different than giving a bartender credit for the spring break crowd that is coming whether he is there or not. And to me, The question you've got to ask is, what is the role of a commissioner? Nothing could show that Roger Goodell truly has the greater interest of the sport of football, that he's taking that into consideration than if he resigned. Because there is not another time in NFL in my lifetime that there has been less faith in the competence on Park Avenue at the NFL offices.
Well, I think there's a two-pronged dynamic here. Number one, it shows us in American sports society and American society in general, we don't want to look, or we don't have the patience to look much deeper than perception or what the aura is. And so Bud Selig gets killed all the time, and I'm sure you get these same phone calls. He's a used car salesman. He's bumbling Bud. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's a terrible commissioner. And Roger Goodell, before I think Ray Rice, for many people was held up as a decent commissioner. People didn't think that he was that terrible. And yet the substance of their commissionerships is so much far superior what Bud Selig has accomplished in directing and growing a game than what Goodell does. And that is merely the flash perception of how a guy speaks, how he dresses, and let's go back to the first conversation. Number two, you're talking about the spring break crowd. Because Goodell has messed up so many things, and because revenue continues to surge, and because the league continues to be as popular as ever, this makes me a little disheartened, Nick. It makes me feel as though the NFL is completely impervious and that there will never be a comeuppance. And I'm not rooting for the league to fail, but I do think there has to be healthy checks and balances, especially in sports. And if nobody ever is going to turn off the TV or not buy a ticket to an NFL game after concussions, after Ray Rice, after domestic violence, after moving teams around, after NFL London, after all of this stuff, then they never will. And I don't know if the NFL owners will ever be punished or penalized for any of their transgressions.
Why do we hold football and sports in general on this level that we don't hold any other wing of the entertainment industry? Like, here, why does football need a personal conduct policy? Why can't the individual teams all do it on their own? And if a team wants to say, the moment you get arrested, we are waiving you, so be it. If a different team wants to say, as long as you're not in prison, pardon me, as long as you're not in prison, we'll play you, so be it. I know it sounds very states' rights of me, but why does the NFL need a personal conduct policy, but the Motion Picture Association of America doesn't?
Well, it's easy. It's because we don't wrap ourselves from a self-identity standpoint, from a community standpoint, in our motion pictures, in our music, in our artists. We don't wear the jerseys of artists. Of course, we wear T-shirts and things like that, but it's different.
Yeah, and kids have posters, and people go to concerts.
But the identity of the community is not wrapped up, or the identity of a family is not wrapped up. Nobody goes and says, we're an M&M family. But everybody says, I'm a Cleveland Browns family.
Correct. And so why can't the Cleveland Browns determine what their fans would like as the standard? Why do we need this very paternalistic overseer in the NFL to do it?
I guess it always stems from that's the way it's always been, that there kind of needs to be a president of the United States type of thing. I mean, you think back to the beginning of baseball, which is really our oldest league, and Kennesaw Mountain Landis, coming down hard on players and being kind of this fist of authority. There's always been this idea that you had to have a strong authoritarian figure at the top. I guess Rozelle was a little bit less of that, but he still was a figurehead. I guess that's important to people.
No, I'm not saying we shouldn't have a commissioner, but I'm talking about the personal conduct policy. That specifically. That was Roger Goodell's baby. Like, the NBA, I guess, kind of has one, and baseball kind of has one, but Roger Goodell came in and said, I'm going to be the law and order commissioner. And fans love it. Be the same reason fans cheer at training camp when the coach makes the players run. And there's some, very interesting sociological discussions to be had about that, but we don't need to do that right now. I feel like, and my sports history here is not strong enough for me to be able to say definitively, but I don't feel like it was always like this. I don't feel like even 20 years ago, if a guy got arrested, the first reaction was, what is Paul Tagliabue going to do? I don't think when a guy got arrested, people said, what is David Stern going to do? Now, if the guy did something on the court, or if the guy did something in regards to the integrity of the sport, the commissioner came in, and I think they should. But I've never heard an overwhelmingly compelling argument as to why we need this policy at all. Because it would appear fans don't care. If fans do care, then the teams can look at their bottom line and say, guys, I know he's our star running back, but this is going to kill us with our fans. We've got to do something. And to me, it would take a lot of the hypocrisy out of it, because what we know is that Roger Goodell plays favorites. What we know is that he makes the rules up as they go along. If you wanted to make the argument, well, you can't have the teams do it because it would be inconsistent, well, I would listen to that argument if there was any chance that the commissioner was consistent, but he's not. And I just feel like people have been duped into thinking, well, of course you need this law and order commissioner, because if not, all these thugs don't run wild. And I just don't believe that to be the case.
Well, I don't either, but you've hit on something there. I mean, Roger Goodell ended up filling a void. I think he came in at a time where the American populace started to believe that the NFL was filled with a lot of bad guys. And there was that litany laundry list of arrests that had happened. There was the Cincinnati Bengals, where they had all of those arrests in the offseason. You had Pac-Man Jones. You had all of these guys. And I think the American public started to have a real distaste for these millionaires that they resented making millions and blowing it by being criminals or being bad guys. And so he kind of wrote...
Right, but it's gotten worse.
He wrote in on that campaign.
I understand, but we now have a decade of empirical data that says arrests have not gone down. In fact, they've slightly ticked up.
But man, doing this show, the show that you do doing this job, that there are still fans, there will always be fans that resent the money that is being given to guys that they think are blowing it by being criminals or bad guys. No matter if the empirical data is there or not, don't you agree that that's the perception of a lot of athletes?
Of course it is. What I'm saying is the personal conduct policy has not been a deterrent. So, I don't know how it's helped those people that are upset about this. Deadspin did a very good, it might have been the Big Lead, I apologize. But it was Jason Lisk of the Big Lead showing that arrests are not down since this policy was instituted. So, it's not helping the fans' resentment, unless, except at least now the fans feel like they're getting their pound of flesh. Is that what it's about?
I think the biggest problem is, maybe they feel that way, but I think even if there's no data there, it's like the death penalty. People feel better that it's around, even if crime doesn't go down. But I think the biggest problem is that fans, and I'm not excluding myself from this type of thinking either, but you have so many fans that hate the criminality of athletes and despise it and say, cut that guy and he shouldn't be in the league. And then the minute their team can pick him up, they're cool with it. And so you had this whole Baltimore Ravens situation where you had Ravens fans defending Rice. And people said, what animals, what monsters. Man, that would happen with any fan base. Any single fan base. If it's your guy, you should give another chance. If it's another team's guy, you got to cut him and get him out of the league. And that's why there's so much patience for this stuff, because every agent and athlete knows he's got another 10 chances. I mean, look at LeGarrette Blount. LeGarrette Blount might not be a criminal, but he's cut because he's a terrible teammate. We can't have him. The next day he's picked up by a better football team.
Yeah, okay, all that's true. I agree with everything you said there. Are we just playing to the basest, most, like you said, the death penalty thing? Screw what the data says. I want to know that we can kill people. Screw what the data says. I want these guys to know, these thugs to know, that we got someone to keep them in line. And I wonder if that's the case.
I do too. To go to that point, it's a point that I asked you before. I don't know if there's ever going to be a comeuppance for the NFL. I mean, people ask me all the time, will the NFL be as popular as it is today 30 years from now? And I guess I can't answer that. But I don't see it with any signs of slowing down, despite having the biggest problems, the biggest scandals, the biggest ethical dilemmas of any sport. I mean, people almost turned baseball completely off because of a strike. And then once they learned steroids as part of the equation, oh, forget it. I can never forget. I haven't watched a baseball game since I found out McGwire was doing steroids. I mean, you hear that all the time. And yet, I've never heard anybody say, I won't watch a football game after I learned about concussions or after the Ray Rice situation or after a million things.
No, the only thing that I actually hear people say, and I bet you can finish the sentence, what's the one reason you occasionally hear people say they like the NFL less or they watch it less? They've wussified the game. You can't hit anyone anymore. Everything's a penalty. I don't like it as much. And you want to know something? I'm in that camp. Like, I don't like football as much as I did 5 years ago. I don't. I don't like the fact that every big hit, I'm waiting for a flag. I don't like the fact that it is not as brutal as it used to be. Like, I watch football in large part because of the violence. Now, people be like, they're modern-day gladiators. Well, not to that extent, but I've got a confession to make. Like, if the Roman Colosseum existed, I might watch. We enjoy violence. We enjoy watching people do things to their bodies that we would not do to ours for entertainment. So we can gamble on it, so we can watch it, so we can talk trash to our friends. This is why cockfighting is popular. This is why sports are popular. And this is why, typically, you either, for your sport to take off, you typically need either a near superhuman dominating it, like a Tiger or a LeBron or a Jordan, or you need a ton of violence. Like, that's what the American public likes. And if that's what we're into, I think it would be silly to expect the people who are watching for those reasons to be like, I'm turning it off because a running back beat up his girlfriend. Like, and that's where I bring up the movies. Like, does anyone say they're not going to go to the next Russell Crowe movie because he threw a phone at a dude? Does anyone say they're not going to go to the next Robert Downey Jr. movie because he used to be a cokehead? Like, we tend to, or I'm not going to buy the next, pick the band album because I hear the guy's on heroin and he got a domestic violence charge. In entertainment, we tend to just say, entertain us. And what you do when you're not entertaining us is not my business. But we don't do that with sports, and I just find that a little odd.
I guess it's somewhere along the line, there was a fork in the road, and if we went 100 years ago in Hollywood, it's not like everybody assumed that those guys were terrible actors, actresses, but I think Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn and all them, they come off pretty squeaky clean. And so at some point there was a fork where people realized entertainers weren't squeaky clean anymore. I don't know if the American public has ever completely accepted that athletes aren't supposed to be that way. To me, that's the biggest reason Tim Tebow became a phenomenon. It was because Tim Tebow captured the American imagination with the old school crop top, big, strong quarterback on campus. He was what the American dream is supposed to be, and maybe it's that the American dream is no longer becoming a singer or an actor, although obviously with things like The Voice and The X Factor, that's still a dream. But maybe it's just that the dream is always that young little Johnny can grow up to be the quarterback of the football team, and it's not. That little Johnny's going to grow up to be an actor, and because of that, we still place those ideals on the athletes, that we still think they should be little Johnny?
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I hadn't really thought of that along those lines. I wonder in all this stuff, how much of it has to do with race, how much of it has to do with jealousy of the money, and how much of it has to do with the fact that most people that go to the movies and that listen to music in high school were not actors and singers. Almost everybody that watches sports played sports. And I think that's a huge factor of it. There's an enormous portion of football fans or basketball fans or baseball fans that played their sport and that maybe not a huge percentage, but a decent percentage, deep down still feel like if not for that damn coach in high school, I could have been there, right? I don't think that is the case with music and movies.
That's absolutely a layer of it. There's no question you've hit on a layer of it. We all view ourselves, if we play even Weekend Warrior stuff, Rec League stuff. But I think there's also a dynamic of the American public has been conditioned, and I truly believe this, that there is a goodness in being part of sports. That teamwork and camaraderie and elevating yourself and pushing yourself and a coach demanding more out of you and you being there for your teammate. Those things are wrapped up into our vision of sports. And so if you play sports or you're watching sports, there's something inherently good there. Nobody ever says you should get into acting because it'll bring out the best in you, or you should become, the next rock star because you're gonna want to be there every day for the drummer. And because you have that dynamic wrapped up in sports, I think there's the resentment that you've got bad guys in the dynamic of something that people think is a really beautiful thing. I mean, why else would we have so many parents holding up athletes as role models? Now, I'm not a parent. You are. I could not imagine being comfortable, and maybe it's because of my job. I could not imagine being comfortable with my kid really idolizing an athlete. I get you wanting to wear a jersey, putting a poster on the wall, but when I hear, but Timmy wants to grow up to be X, I'm like, oh my God, don't ever say that, because so many of these guys, there's no reason to believe that they should be a role model outside of the way that they can throw a football.
Like, who are the role models? It's not the politicians, right? And it's not the, actors and musicians have the same foibles that athletes do. And it's very, very hard to convince them, kids, have your role model be your uncle who's the firefighter. And so what do? You know what I mean? Like, I happen to think, and this is, again, a whole nother podcast, I happen to think the concept of role models is like an overblown one. I think your kids are going to be who they are. And, my son's a pretty high-level high school basketball player. He might mimic, Anthony Davis's closeout, but I don't see him trying to, grow up to be that guy. And that's, again, I wonder how much of what we believe and what we take as just common knowledge and fact is based on, like, the very colorful and the very almost romantic sports writing narrative that, our parents came up reading and thinking about that maybe never were true. Like, everyone always thought Mickey Mantle was awesome. Did people really say, I'm going to grow up and be Mickey Mantle? Well, I suppose young baseball players did, but did that mean that once they found out he was an alcoholic, it destroyed them?
No, I think some of the romanticism, a lot of the romanticism has been stripped away because of modern media and modern cynicism. We know too much about the athletes, about the teams, and so it's impossible to ever look at an athlete like Mickey Mantle again, which is another podcast to itself, but the idolatry surrounding Derek Jeter, because Jeter never showed any flaws. There was never a chink in the armor. And so he got an adulation that was reserved for somebody 50 years ago. And we never see that, which is what made it so kind of disturbing at times, because you're like, well, nobody can be perfect, but he never showed any of that. And so I think luckily we won't do that anymore. I mean, look, LeBron could have been Bill Russell in a different era that never showed any flaws, although he was very socially conscious, so maybe it's a bad example. But LeBron could be Joe DiMaggio or something, but he won't be because of the decision. He won't be because there will be a few things that people will pick apart because he wasn't clutch or whatever. And so because of that.
You know what I think ended that was Tiger.
I think it started happening before Tiger, but Tiger certainly shattered a portion of it.
I think Tiger, and then to a different extent, Joe Paterno is what ended it entirely. I think that, because the Tiger anniversary is just 5 years ago this Thanksgiving. And Joe Paterno obviously was about 3 years ago. I think those two things coming back to back, because I think we forget how perfect people looked at Tiger Woods as. I think when those two narratives came crashing down, and I think people are like, all right, I mean, this is it. Like, there are no heroes. Like, maybe we thought there were some, but there are no heroes. And that's why I think you're right about Jeter. Like, is Jeter going to go down in history as the last one?
I don't think he'll be the last one, because I think there is going to be guys that have carved out their public personas so sharply to never leave anything to doubt now, knowing that there will inevitably have to be a few carryovers down the line, because now you are so aware of this stuff. But it's going to be virtually impossible to keep it all under wraps. But guys like Brady and Manning are approaching that because we don't really know of their flaws either. So I think there could always be that, but it's becoming less and less. And there's always going to be cynicism now from a lot of people surrounding guys like Brady and Manning. I mean, how many times do people just crush Manning just because he's a choke artist? Because there's not a lot to berate him about otherwise.
Right. Yeah. You know who that guy is here in Houston? J.J. Watt.
Untouchable.
Like, I mean, that's untouchable. And I'm telling you, like, if something, because Watt, it's not just that he's a great player. Like, everyone that's listening to this knows he is a great player. But, like, this guy sent handwritten notes to every police station and fire station in Houston on Thanksgiving, along with pizza. Like, he meets with sick and disabled kids without the media there, like, twice a week. Like, he has gone out of his way to be an amazing steward of the community. So much so that, like, the running joke in the media is, off the air and off the record, is like, so how many bodies does this guy have buried in his yard? You know what I mean? Like, hey, he is so perfect. The running joke is it has to be a front or something awful. And, if it came out that J.J. Watt, like, if there was, some, TMZ video of J.J. Watt, like, mocking using a slur or mocking a little kid or doing something criminal, so I guess this kind of goes up against the point I made earlier. I'm kind of contradicting myself here now that I think it through. It would be crushing for this area. Just totally crushing, because they have built him up as a saint. As, like, if there's any role models left in Houston, he's the guy.
Well, I think that's going to be really dangerous then, because I think there are a lot of
dangerous.
I think there's a lot of good guys in sports, and maybe J.J. Watt is one of those really genuinely awesome guys, because those people exist. It just so happens that they wear jerseys. I mean, but those people exist in all.
They exist, but we don't. But, like, to deify anyone is dangerous. Like, D.A., like, I think I've known you for almost 10 years almost, and I feel like I know your character. I know you're a really good guy. But if over the course of your career, if I were to isolate your 2 or 3 lowest, worst moments, I bet it could make you look bad. And I know that's the case with me. And I believe in my heart I'm a good person. Like, I think I'm a good father, a good parent. A good father, a good husband. I think I'm charitable. But if you just isolated my worst moment from the last year, I'd probably look like a scumbag. And so it gets dangerous when you elevate someone from he's a really good guy to he's a saint. And that's what we do with some of these sports figures sometimes, I guess.
There's no question. And I guess it leads back to the original point, and we'll wrap up here on this, is that why do we still need heroes? It really goes back to this Goodell conversation, where Goodell is supposed to uphold this kind of like mythical morality of the NFL and of sports. Why do we really even care anymore? And maybe it's because I'm not a parent, maybe because I didn't grow up with any heroes outside of my family. My only heroes ever were like my mom and my grandma. That was it. So I don't really know why people are so desperate for heroes these days, but I guess people need J.J. Watt in their lives.
Yeah, I guess the answer is, I would think the answer is, because for a lot of people, for everyone, life is hard. And for a lot of people, it kind of sucks. Like, it hasn't turned out the way you had hoped. And oh gosh, I almost rear-ended a guy. And so for example, had I just hit that person, all they would have had going for them is if J.J. Watt can win the league MVP. They'd have been like, damn it, it's 2 weeks before Christmas. This idiot in a Tahoe just ran into me. But hopefully J.J. Watt can decapitate Andrew Luck this weekend. And, I guess that's it. Can we spend 90 seconds on Clowney?
Yes, because I really did want to talk to you about this. I'm worried that this is the start of a heartbreaking career.
No doubt about it. To me, that's not the most interesting part. The most interesting part is Jadeveon Clowney is owed an apology by about 70 million people, and he'll never get it. We now know his last year at South Carolina, he had a sports hernia and a knee injury, and he played through it. We now know that for 3 games this year, he played on a knee that needed microfracture surgery. And yet, what has the narrative been around him? He's lazy, he's soft, he doesn't care, he won't play through, he doesn't know the difference between being hurt and being injured. And everyone was wrong, and no one's going to apologize. Like, Clowney has been so unfairly maligned by anonymous scouts and anonymous team sources and anonymous teammates. It happened in South Carolina, and it happened really up until yesterday when we found out, it's not that he could play through it, but he doesn't want to deal with pain. It's not that he's soft. It's that he has a devastating knee injury. And narratives start to form, and people don't want to let them go. The narrative on Clowney was he's a bum, when it turns out he was injured. And I just think it's terribly unfair. And on top of that, I think that, I'm not calling the guy Greg Oden, but the last number 1 overall pick I know of that had microfracture surgery was Greg Oden, and we know how that turned out. And so I'm worried about the guy.
I'm 100% in agreement with you on the reputation of him being a dog. It was completely unfair at South Carolina since people didn't really know what was going on. And now, you think back and you go, that was totally out of bounds. From a future standpoint, I can't think of one guy, bro, that has had microfracture that came back to be even as good as he was. It's not like Tommy John where you can come back and be better. It's not like an ACL where you can come back and be as good. I don't know if I can think of anybody that's had microfracture that came back to be 75% of what they were.
There's a couple. Marcus Colston had it. Reggie Bush had it. Now, Reggie Bush, it's entirely possible that it did, that Reggie Bush is only 70% of what he was going to be. In the NBA, Jason Kidd had it and then played like another 10 years. So there are a few. But I would argue, aside from like a spinal cord injury, this is the worst injury a football player can have. Maybe an Achilles is worse, but I don't think so. I think microfracture is the worst news you can hear. And for the Texans to have known this was a possibility after week 1 and to not put him on the short-term IR, to seemingly leak things that were publicly pressuring him to get back on the field, to not treat Clowney like the incredibly valuable resource that he is. It is so short-sighted and so juvenile. It's like, you ever seen like the psychological test, the marshmallow test? You put a little kid in a room and you put a big marshmallow in front of him and you say, if you don't eat this until I come back, I'll give you 5 of them. But if when I come back, it's eaten, you don't get any more marshmallows. Well, it's like a test of a child's maturity, because every time, like, if they're 6 or under, the moment the tester walks out of the room, the kid eats the damn marshmallow because they're kids. I feel like that's what the Texans did with Clowney. Like, okay, if we just wait, we could, and if we are just cautious, and if we are just extra conservative, we could have this great asset for the next 15 years. But, damn it, we're 1-0, and we got this new head coach, and we were bad last year, so let's just try to get him back on the field.
I guess I didn't realize that, not having been close to the situation, that they had kept pressuring him to come back. I did wonder why they wouldn't have just had him have this surgery right when the first injury happened, but the way that their statements came out, it just kind of read as, well, we wanted to see if it could heal on its own and the whole mumbo-jumbo we usually hear. But I didn't realize that they were kind of knowing that this was a possibility and pressuring him to come back every week.
They knew it was a possibility. They would say they weren't pressuring him. But local people and national people reported team sources are frustrated with Clowney. Team sources think Clowney doesn't know the difference between pain and injury. Team sources, are frustrated that Jadeveon Clowney doesn't understand in the NFL you've got to play through pain. And you know as well as I, those reports don't come out of thin air. It's just unfair to the guy. And it continued a narrative that even this morning on the show, when now we know he needs major knee surgery, people were talking trash about him. And it's just unfair to the guy. And I can't get over the fact that I wonder if none of this happens, if the NCAA doesn't have the exploitive rule that you got to play 3 years. If after his sophomore year he goes in the draft and he goes number 1 overall to the Chiefs, and they see his sports hernia, they see his minor at the time knee injury, and he has better trainers and better facilities, and he's better taken care of, if this young man has a totally different career. But he didn't, and now he won't, and now, his rookie season was a total waste. And if they're saying they think he can be back September 7th, I don't know what you can expect out of year 2. And if you're then 2 years removed from really playing football, that's a tough putt, man.
Yeah, and then you're 3 years removed from your best season as an athlete, which was the year before he left in South Carolina. You're starting to get farther and farther removed from what your physical peak was and your most success. Nick Wright joining us here, Sports Radio 610. Check him out, CBS Sports Radio as well on Sunday night, 6 until 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We could do another 13 of these bad boys, so maybe we will coming up here soon, my man. Thanks so much for joining us, and we shall do it again soon.
Thanks, Damon. I'll talk to you later, brother.
All right, thanks to Nick Wright, good friend of mine, for joining us here on the show. Once again, you can catch him on Sports Radio 610 in Houston, hosting mornings, and on CBS Sports Radio on Sunday evenings. All right, so coming up next, we've got Mraz Brock, producer's side B part of the podcast. A reminder, you can catch the DA Show's podcast, the Permission Granted podcast, on a multitude of outlets. We always post it on SoundCloud. If you want to go there, great for your phone, soundcloud.com, or use the SoundCloud app. Also on YouTube, the video is always up there every week as well if you want to watch it there, youtube.com/The DA Show. The rest of our videos are always up there, so you can always subscribe to that. And on iTunes. If you go to iTunes, just simply search DA's Permission Granted, and you'll get them. And that's the way you can find it on SoundCloud as well. All right, Mraz Brock, now.
All right, welcome into Side B of the Permission Granted podcast, the producer's side, on episode 17, as the jingle bells are rocking here in December. As always, this is Sean Mraz, the executive producer of the DA Show, joined by the former musical director of the DA Show, Kenny Brock. Kenny, how are you?
I don't know, I'm trying to get over the corniest line of the year. We're jingling through December here.
I'm trying to give a little pizzazz to the starters instead of just the normal. You could subscribe to us on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, and LimeWire.
Fine, but that's the LimeWire. Really, can you get it on Napster too?
Yes, I think you can. We'll allow. We will not sue if you download for free on those platforms.
No, I'm all right, man. How's everything going?
What are you eating? Something?
Yeah. A little mozzarella cheese, actually.
Just the mozzarella right out of the fridge.
Not even out of the fridge. I forgot to put it away after dinner.
Oh, so the mozzarella's been out for a couple hours on the table, and you said, oh, well, you know what? As I'm about to go speak into a podcast, let me just start chowing down.
Yeah, a little room temperature mozzarella. What are you going to do?
All right, I love that. I've eaten...
The hunger just hits you, man.
I gotcha. I've eaten the Chinese food if I've left out the dumplings the night before, and I've come home the next morning, and I've eaten a dumpling that's been out all night, so I know where that's at.
8 hours isn't going to kill anybody. There's no disease that's going to, develop and spread in 8 hours. It's going to eat away your insides, and then all of a sudden you're not going to be good. It's fun. Sometimes you leave stuff out, whatever.
I totally agree. I'm all for it. Listen, I didn't get this fat out of nowhere.
I know. That's what I fear.
All right. Well,
I just thought about that. I'm like, should I really be admitting this? Maybe I'm going to put on a few extra. What are you going to do?
No, don't worry about that whatsoever. Well, let's get into DA just had Nick Wright on the podcast from our CBS Sports Radio affiliate 610 down in Houston. He obviously has his finger on the pulse there with all the stuff going on with Jadeveon Clowney coming down now this week that he's going to need microfracture surgery, and the beginning of next season is in doubt. I guess, Kenny, your initial reaction to this?
I feel bad for honestly, I feel bad for the Texans. I feel bad for Clowney because you know what? Clowney should have came out after his sophomore season, but he didn't, and he couldn't. And now, you know, he's got to sit out an entire football season for the most part and then part of next year and not be able to work out much this offseason. It's just a terrible situation for him and obviously for the Texans.
I feel terribly also, not of course for him, of course for the Texans, and of course us as fans. Now you hope and you pray that he does come back fully healthy, and obviously guys have. However, there have been several of the names that I know DA's run down on the show, and I know you're well aware of too, as far as athletes that we were kind of robbed of seeing in their prime and kind of where their careers were cut short because of this surgery. This isn't like Tommy John is now in baseball, where these guys seem to bounce back no problem. I mean, this is serious. I mean, obviously we mentioned Greg Oden, Jamal Mashburn, Steve Smith. You know, run down the whole list. So. Yeah. You hope that Clowney doesn't end up as one of those guys, but you know, in the event that he does, I can't help but look back to draft day, and obviously there's no way they could have foresaw this. And knowing what we know now about the Texans, where they have J.J. Watt, their defensive line is their least of their problems. They still went out there and they took Clowney because he was a beast and because he was the best player on the board and because they were number one. And now, you know, I wonder. Do you think the Texans are, and of course they're going to have some regret, but I mean, they have no quarterback here. They couldn't trade back, draft Bridgewater or anything. Like, was it still the right move to draft Clowney? I guess what I'm asking.
Yeah, it still was, because who was the first quarterback off the board? I think it was Blake Bortles.
Yeah, at number 3, which was astonishing at that point, too. Nobody expected him to go at 3.
No. So think about that. Think about if they drafted Bortles at number 1. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. Bortles has been an unmitigated disaster on the Jaguars. So, no, and then what? They draft Sammy Watkins. They already have Andre Johnson. They already have DeAndre Hopkins. You're not going to take a running back at that position. Could they have went O-line? Their O-line seems to be pretty good. So I think they took best available at what, you know, at this point, at what they needed.
Right. And, I would say my alternate to that would be, would this caution teams in the future, if you have the number 1 pick overall and the strongest part of your team is what the absolute stud, no-brainer number 1 pick is, like, albeit whether it's a quarterback, defensive end, would you be more inclined to trade down and do what the Rams did with the RG3 situation?
Yes, but there wasn't someone that high caliber that teams were willing to, you know, basically give the farm up for that draft spot. I think that the Texans kind of got caught in the bad spot because there wasn't a consensus number 1 overall pick. Like, yeah, Clowney was probably the freakish athlete coming out, but I mean, no one was trading up 8 spots and giving up, you know, 5 rounds of draft picks for Greg Robinson out of the offensive lineman out of Auburn. You know, like those kind of things. It just was
it's the luck of the draw kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. If they're drafting, you know, a couple years ago and you got Andrew Luck and RG3 and those guys in there, okay, and you messed up this way, I got it. But I think the immediacy of it too, like we were talking before we started rolling. Now this is the second time in how many years that they've drafted number 1 overall and they've taken a defensive lineman that maybe isn't going to work out, with Mario Williams out of Maryland a couple years ago, or I guess maybe that's like 10 years ago now.
Yeah, it was the Reggie Bush year.
Yeah, so yeah, Reggie Bush. So he's been in the league for a while, and now with Jadeveon Clowney, it's just like, boy, you just wonder if they just maybe have a little bit of a jinx at that, you know, with taking out of the top spot like that or something. Or, you know, if Rick, is it Rick Smith, I think, is their GM? I think he's just maybe overthinking these things. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Again, no, you couldn't. He was supposed to be the freakish talent. He wasn't. Everybody knew he was a no-brainer. I think just the point I was getting is that they had J.J. Watt and they had all these that maybe they should have, you know, there had to have been a team willing to trade into that spot. But I guess if the value wasn't there in a trade, you know, enough for that, then what were they supposed to do? So I think it's just the luck of the draw, like you said. It's pretty freaking crazy, man. I mean, but I mean, other than that, let's, you know, what are you gonna do? We're going forward here, Kenny. You pumped up for December, Christmas time, all this stuff?
No, not really. I don't care.
What do you mean you don't care? What do you mean you don't care?
I mean, it's Christmas. Yeah, like it'll be, you know, once Christmas comes, it'll be fine. But
are you like the Grinch?
No, we've had. I just don't get jazzed up over putting up Christmas decorations and trees and everything like that. I don't have I don't care enough. Like, yeah, it would be cool. I'll buy my presents and hemorrhage out my next 4 paychecks to give people
that's
what
a
they
big
want
part
for
of it.
Christmas.
Yes.
You know, I think that's maybe why I'm like kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. This is fine. But also, I'm going to be broke for the next 3.5 weeks.
Exactly. So you can't wait for the dust to clear in mid-January and go, okay, I've balanced out again. Hopefully, if you haven't put everything on a credit card.
Oh, but the problem is then in mid-January, I'm going to a bachelor party. So then once again, I'll be broke. So
that's right.
It's vicious.
You never catch up. You never catch up.
No.
Are you excited? For listeners who don't know, we go out to a little dinner at the end of the year to kind of celebrate a good year on the DA show. DA's, takes us out to a good Manhattan joint. We're heading out to an Italian restaurant. Are you excited for that?
Oh, yeah. No, it definitely am. You told me the other day, gave me a couple of the restaurants, and I looked them up, and was checking out the menus and was kind of getting juiced up, and then we got the official word from DA, sent us an email on where we were going to be going, and I think it looks pretty good. I mean, the menu looks great, and the area of town is really good, but I got a bit of a problem with you.
What's that?
Shockingly.
Well, let's hear the problem.
As we're having this text conversation back and forth with me, with myself, you, and DA about the where we're going and everything, you bring up if they don't have cannolis, basically you're not going.
Well, what's wrong with that?
What do you mean, what's wrong with that? So what if they don't have a freaking cannoli?
Well,
I'm sure there's a cannoli guy around the corner.
A cannoli guy? He's not the ice cream man.
I'm sure there is one. It's Little Italy. They got to have cannolis growing up trees with Zeppelis.
Well, that is my point, though. See, you're speaking for my point. My point is, when DA sent us a list of a couple restaurants, there was one restaurant where I clicked on the whole menu, and in the desserts, it had like 10 things lined up, and I noticed there was an omission of a cannoli. How can you, in this day and age, it's now 2014, and even if this was 1953, if you're running an Italian restaurant, other than spaghetti and meatballs, the other assurance that should be on the menu is a cannoli. How can we go to a place that doesn't offer a cannoli? What do you mean?
It's an assurance. You know that it's going to be there because it's an Italian restaurant. They don't have to put it on the menu.
Well, that's dumb. That's dumb. Because then you're going to have less people order them. Because there's a lot of stupid people who order off menus.
No, or you walk in, you say, hey, you got a cannoli? Yeah, we got cannolis, of course. What do you think we're doing here?
So you think that'll be the situation when I go into it?
Yeah, I guarantee you. If you ask them when you first sit down, and before we order appetizers, before we order drinks, which there will be plenty of, by the way.
Listen, on DA's dime, you better believe it.
I'm getting just absolutely loaded on this thing. I'm not eating all day, and I'm going to go in just ready to be completely obliterated and just sloppily shoveling, veal scallopini into my mouth.
Is that right? You're going to go with the veal scallopini?
No, it's funny. Laura and I were looking at the menu, and that jumped out at me, but I don't know why. I just remember that.
No chicken caprese?
No. The chicken marsala looked pretty good. I don't know. We'll see when we get there. I don't know what kind of mood I'm going to be in.
I hear that.
As a mood dresser, I'm a mood eater.
I'm a mood eater, too. You know what? I actually agree with you that. I hear that. But still, you're assuring me I'm going to step in this place, there's going to be a cannoli.
There's going to be a cannoli. I guarantee it. And if not, I guarantee the chef will personally make you a cannoli.
But what if they don't have the cream? You need to have the cream to make the cannoli. Or what if they have the cream and they don't have the shell? They need the both.
No, they'll be able to figure it out. I promise you. They are innovative people.
All right.
There will be cannolis around there.
So if you're going to promise me that, and by the way, do you understand me? So basically you're saying with my gripe that I shouldn't even be worried because of course they're going to have a cannoli. Let's say in the event they do not have one and cannot make one, will you stand united in my front that is a terrible job?
Yeah, I'll say that it's a terrible job because it's an Italian restaurant. I just assume, that's how I go into these things. I go in and I assume that they will have it because it's such an Italian staple, and if they don't, well, then that place should be, scorched earth, burn it down, and never deal with it again.
Jeez. Well, I hope so. Everything going all right at the apartment Christmas time? You get the old tree out of the attic and put it up yet?
No, we don't do trees here at the Brock household in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Wait. You don't put up a tree? What do you put up, the Festivus pole?
No, I don't put up anything.
What do you mean you don't put up anything?
What did I just tell you? What did I literally
How do you not put up anything?
I don't put up anything. Well, we don't have space. I don't have a sprawling estate here. I'm living in a one-bedroom apartment or whatever.
How about a little tabletop tree?
No, because I got to conserve space. I conserve my tweets and my space on Twitter, which you've seen in action many a time. You have to word everything perfectly and use specific words. I have to use that space consciously and conservatively because I don't have enough space to just put a 2-foot tree.
First of all, I've been in your apartment. You have space. It's not like you're living, with Grandpa Joe in Willy Wonka's little apartment there.
Why? What do you put up in your apartment out there in Long Island? You got a freaking 10-foot tall Christmas tree?
I think it's about 6 feet.
Did you cut that down yourself there, Charlie Brown?
You don't cut down a tree. You put up a fake tree. Nobody cuts down trees anymore. This isn't Clark Griswold.
Wait. You have a 10-foot fake tree.
6 foot.
A 6-foot fake tree.
Fake tree, which is what everybody does now.
No, not true. Up until my mom still puts up a real tree.
Oh, come on.
All my aunts and uncles still puts up real trees. All my family, all my friends and their family, still put up real trees.
That is
I
ludicrous.
guess it's only you phonies in Long Island.
No, first of all, they still have the tree farms on Long Island, but Smokey the Bear would not be happy. You can't be putting up real trees. Those things are ready to set fire. You got the needles all over the place. They're ready to fall down. God forbid that thing falls down. It could crush the dog. You can't have a real tree anymore. Put the fake tree up.
You have a wet rat as a dog, and
he's not a wet rat.
If my pillow fell off the couch, it would crush that freaking thing.
No, you
can't.
Be
a man. Get yourself a real dog, and not these little foo-foo dogs that you got.
He is a real dog. He's a Pomeranian.
He's like a little furry, fluffy rabbit-looking thing. I mean, get out of here. So get yourself a real dog, and the tree falling over won't kill it. Or it'll be smart enough to move.
Well, what about the needles? What, you want to vacuum every day around that tree? No.
Oh, what? You got to clean up every day around the apartment anyways.
It depends. If Danielle's working doubles, I'll leave that thing at filth for a couple days.
Yeah, as I look at my sink, I made dinner tonight, and the sink is just littered with dirty dishes that I probably won't get to for another day.
Oh, you're really living a life out there in Hoboken. Well, I'm glad you respected my fake tree ability. At least I put up a tree, so you could basically, go scratch.
Oh, Laura and I were, considering getting a tree, and then we said, why?
What is it, Christmas with the cranks over there?
No, but we're not going to be here Christmas Day, so why do I need a tree here on Christmas Day?
It adds to a festive atmosphere.
No. I honestly,
I feel bad for your children.
I'm having a really tough time. No, why? Well, because... A, I'm like 10 years away from having kids at this point.
Oh.
B,
all it takes is
we're not going to be here Christmas. We're not celebrating Christmas Eve or Christmas Day here. So why in God's name am I going to have a Christmas tree taking up room in my living room if I'm not going to be here to put presents under it and open set presents?
Well, don't you have to get presents and stuff for Laura?
I have one present that she's getting, yeah.
Okay, so wouldn't you like to wrap it and leave it under the tree and make it look nice for the month?
No.
You don't know what you're talking about. You're the Grinch.
All of a sudden, you're like this, Betty Crocker homemaker freaking person.
I want to put Betty Crocker freaking homemade. What does that even mean? Because I like to actually celebrate a holiday.
Oh, you're like Martha Stewart. Well, I want to get the Christmas tree and then we'll wrap the present and put it under to make it look nice. What the freak are you talking about? Can you be a man? Can you let your balls hang down for once in your life?
First of all, they can hang down 11 months of the year. In December, I want it to be Christmas time, and I want it to look nice, and I want my Swiss Miss hot chocolate. I want candy canes hanging. I want Santa. I want it all.
You're a loser. That's all there is to it.
All right, well, we'll leave it on that note. Kenny, go back to bed. Get some sleep. That was Kenny. You could follow him at KBrockJR on Twitter. You could follow me at Sean Morash CBS. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can subscribe to the Permission Granted podcast on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes. Check us out, YouTube, The DA Show. Kenny?
YouTube.com/The DA Show.
See, he's better when we do these link parts at the end.
Facebook.com/The DA Show. I mean, do you use websites except to go to porn? I mean, come on.
I know several porn sites. You're correct. Yes. Those I could give you.
Don't start promoting those on the podcast.
I will not. I will avoid
names.
We're
looking for a sponsorship.
I'll avoid names. But, yes. Well, Kenny, thank you. That'll do it. Enjoy your non-tree, your Grinch atmosphere, and, have a good week.
Yeah, I will. I'll talk to you in a few hours, and then I'll see you again Saturday night to get nice and fat and plump and drunk on Saturday night on DA's tab.
All right. Let's go cannolis.